My name is Dorcas. I don't know how to truly begin this story because some wounds never fully heal, especially the ones we hide behind our smiles. But I will try because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs to hear my voice. Maybe there's a girl somewhere standing at the edge of her own downfall, thinking she's alone. I want her to know she's not. I was born into a family that Lagos knew by name. My father, Chief Thompson, was a businessman with respect, influence, and that kind of voice that's made men pause mid-sentence. My mother, Mrs. Anna Thompson, was elegant, quiet, and strong in ways only women from her generation could be. We lived in a beautiful house in Ikea. Not too loud, not too modest, just enough to make people nod when they passed by. We had a housemaid, a driver, and every Christmas we hosted parties that echoed into the streets. That was the world I grew up in. Structured, sheltered, respected. I was the last born, the only daughter, the star of my father's eye. Whatever I wanted, I got. And with that came pride, too much of it. They gave me everything except one thing, truth. Nobody prepared me for the world beyond our gates. Nobody told me that beauty fades, that love isn't always kind, that the attention of men is not the same as value. I started going out at night while I was in my second year in university. At first, it was just for fun. A few friends, some music, maybe a bottle or two, but soon the parties became darker, the men older, the gifts more expensive. One bought me a phone, another paid my rent off campus. I told myself I was in control, that I was just using them the way they used me. But I was lying to myself. Every time I laid with a man who didn't know my favorite color or the dreams I had as a child, I left a piece of myself behind. And one day, I realized I had nothing left to give. When I missed my period, I laughed. I told myself it was stress. I drank ginger and lime, starved myself, took pills my roommate suggested. But the bomb still came. The nausea still came. The baby still came. I remember the day I told my parents. My mother stood still like a carved statue. My father shouted so much I thought he'd collapse. "Who is the father?" he asked. And when I couldn't answer, I saw his heart break. Not because of the pregnancy, but because I didn't even know whose seed I carried. That night they told me to leave. No yelling, no discussion. Just get out, Dorcas. You have shamed us. I left with a small bag and shame as my only companion. Friends? They disappeared. The same girls who laughed with me now looked at me like I was dirt. I walked and walked until my feet bled. I slept outside a closed shop that first night. And every night after that, the cold became my blanket. Lagos doesn't slow down for anyone. Cars passed, people stared, but nobody helped. I begged for food, for water, for a little shade. Some gave coins, others spat insults. One man even offered money if I would entertain him behind the building with my swollen belly. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. When I gave birth under a wooden shed at the back of the market, only one old woman helped me. She brought hot water, tore her own wrapper for the baby, and said nothing the whole time. I named my baby girl Anuoluwa, God's mercy, because that's all I had left. We stayed in the market for weeks. I tied Anu on my back during the day and begged at bus stops. I wrapped her in cloth at night, lying beside her, whispering songs my mother used to sing. I was hungry, broken. Sometimes I thought of walking into the lagoon with her. But each time I looked at her tiny fingers, I stayed. She deserved to live. Then one morning, as the sun kissed the streets and the vendors started shouting their goods, a man walked into my life. He wore a white shirt, clean and sharp, and drove a black SUV. He was tall, fair-skinned, with eyes that looked kind but curious. He stopped right in front of me. "Why are you here?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I was ashamed of the dirt on my skin, of the flies around us, of the milk stain on my wrapper. I just held Anu close. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Come with me. You don't belong here." He took me to his house in Lekki. It was like walking into a movie. Glass walls, smooth tiles, scented air. He told his housekeeper to give me food. He told the cook to prepare something special. He told his guards to show me a guest suite, not a room, an apartment. Clean sheets, hot water, pillows that felt like clouds. I wept. For days, I expected him to ask for something, to touch me, to demand gratitude, but he never did. He would visit sometimes, play with Anu, ask me how I was feeling. Slowly, I opened up. I told him everything, from the parties to the men to the cold market floor. He listened. Not once did he interrupt or shake his head. He told me his name was Mr. Obina, a widower, no children. He said, "I see strength in you, Dorcas. You didn't give up. That's rare." A few months later, he asked me to be his wife. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I felt unworthy, but he told me love was not a reward, it was a gift. But before the wedding, he said something that changed my life even more. "You've survived, Dorcas, but you haven't healed." I was confused. I thought food, clothes, and shelter were enough. But he took me to a rehabilitation center, a clean, quiet place filled with women like me, survivors of shame, of addiction, of trauma. There I met a therapist named Auntie Funke. She was soft-spoken, patient, and wise. For weeks, I sat with her and poured out years of pain. The night my father slapped the wall instead of me, the guilt I felt after every strange man left my bed, the dreams I had buried so deep, I forgot they existed. Some days I cried, some days I just stared at the ceiling. Healing is not easy. It peels you layer by layer until you see your own soul bare. But I healed, slowly, truthfully, fully. And when I returned to Obina's house, I was not the same woman. I walked taller. I smiled without guilt. I was no longer just a mother or a wife to be. I was Dorcas, a married woman. Our wedding was quiet, no noise, just me, him, and a few witnesses. And peace. For the first time in years, I had peace. 5 years passed. Anu grew into a bright, beautiful girl. She loved music and called Obina daddy. Life began to feel normal. I smiled without pretending. I cooked, I danced, I lived. But just when I thought the past was buried, it returned with footsteps. A man showed up at our gate, rugged, arrogant, holding some papers. He claimed to be Anu's father. He wanted rights, access, control. My heart froze. He had seen in pictures online, photos from a community event where Anu had danced. He said he remembered me, that we had met at some club, that she looked like him. He brought lawyers. He demanded a paternity test. The test came back positive. Obina held my hand as the courtroom filled with whispers. The judge listened. I told my story again, this time to the law. I spoke of the abandonment, of the shame, of the night my water broke behind the market stall. When the man was asked where he had been, he smirked and said, "I didn't know. She didn't tell me." The judge shook his head. Fatherhood is not by blood alone. It is by sacrifice, by presence. The case was dismissed. The man walked out with nothing but his pride shattered. A few months later, my parents came. They stood outside our gate like strangers. My mother clutched her bag tightly, as if her fingers were fighting regret. My father, he looked older, grayer, and smaller. They didn't speak at first, just tears. Then my father knelt down. "Dorcas," he said, his voice cracking, "I failed you. I judged you too quickly. I let shame make me forget I was your father first. I forgave them because life has taught me that bitterness is a heavier burden than pain. So now I tell my story, not with pride, but with purpose. If you see a girl in the street, don't just look away. If your child falls, catch her. Don't let society raise her with cold hands. And if you, like me, have fallen, remember this. You're not your past. You're not your mistakes. You're not what people call you. You're what you rise to become. My name is Dorcas, and I survived.